What if there was a place? And to get there, all you have to do.
All aboard! This is the Polar Express!
Come, journey to a world. Become real.
I want to believe, but...
Believe.
Brace yourself!
Look! Isn't that amazing?
And Tom Hanks.
Sometimes, the most real
Oi!
Express.
Have you ever watched the Polar Express and felt something was a broken bar a little strange about it? This Christmas classic looks magical on the surface, but behind the animation and train ride is a movie filled with fascinating details, expensive technology, and emotional moments you might have never noticed. Welcome to Hidden Real Facts. Today we're uncovering the story, secrets, and meaning behind the Polar Express. The Polar Express is a Christmas fantasy adventure movie released in 2004. It was directed by Robert Zemeckis and based on the popular children's book by Chris Van Allsburg. The film stars Tom Hanks, who plays multiple characters, including the conductor, the hobo, Santa Claus, and even the boy's father. Other voice actors include Daryl Sabur, Nana Gay, Jimmy Bennett, and Eddie Deezen. One thing that made this movie very different from others at the time was how it was animated. Instead of regular animation, the actors wore motion capture suits. The real movements and facial expressions were recorded and turned into animated characters using computers. Filming with this technology took place between June 2003 and May 2004, and it was some of the most advanced movie making ever done at the time. Release reception: the movie first premiered at the Chicago International Film Festival in October 2004 and then released in theaters across the United States that November. When it came out, critics had mixed feelings. Some people loved the magical story, but others felt the animation looked creepy or unrealistic. The budget for the movie was extremely high, making it the most expensive animated film ever made at the time. However, it still earned hundreds of millions of dollars at the box office. Thanks to later re-releases during the holiday season, the movie went on to earn over $300 million worldwide. The film was also dedicated to actor Michael Jeter, who passed away before the movie was released. He played the role of Smokey, one of Santa's elves. Story summary: now let's talk about the story. On Christmas Eve, in a small town in Michigan, a young boy named Chris begins to doubt if Santa Claus is real. That night, a mysterious train called the Polar Express pulls up in front of his house. When the conductor invites him aboard, Chris decides to take a chance and steps on the train. Inside, he meets Holly, a brave and loyal girl, and Lenny, a talkative boy who thinks he knows everything. Later, another boy named Billy nearly misses the train, but Chris saves him by pulling the emergency brake. Billy chooses to sit alone in a separate car, clearly feeling left out and unsure. Adventure on the train: as the train continues its journey, the kids are served hot chocolate. Holly leaves with the conductor to bring Billy a drink, but when Chris tries to return her ticket, it flies away into the wilderness. Later, Holly realizes her ticket is missing, and the conductor removes her from her seat. Fearing she will be kicked off the train, Chris runs across the roof of the train to find her, where he meets a strange ghostly hobo who gives him advice about listening carefully and choosing his own path. Chris later finds Holly driving the train while the engineers repair a headlight. The train almost crashes into a herd of caribou and soon slides onto a frozen lake after losing control. The train nearly falls into disaster, but miraculously makes it across the ice. North Pole: Santa Claus. Finally, the Polar Express arrives at the North Pole. The children are told one of them will receive the first Christmas gift from Santa. While trying to bring Billy into the celebration, the kids accidentally detach their train car and it crashes straight into Santa's workshop. Billy discovers a present with his name on it, proving to him that he truly matters. The children are then loaded into Santa's gift sack, where they reunite with Lenny and are led outside. When Santa arrives, a bell falls from the reins of a reindeer. At first, Chris cannot hear its sound. But when he chooses to believe again, the bell rings loud and clear. Santa gives Chris the bell as the first gift of Christmas. Ending meaning on the ride home, Chris realizes the bell slipped through a hole in his pocket. But Christmas morning, he finds it returned with a note from Santa himself. Chris and his sister can hear the bell, but their parents cannot. As the years pass, Chris grows up, and even his sister slowly stops hearing the sound. But he never does, because for people who truly believe, the bell never stops ringing. Tom Hanks, the quintessential multi-hyphenate performer in the Polar Express. Tom Hanks' involvement in the Polar Express stands as a cornerstone of the film's casting strategy, embodying director Robert Zemeckis' ambitious vision to fuse live-action intimacy with animated wonder. Hanks, already a cinematic icon by 2004 with an Oscar sweep for Philadelphia and Forrest Gump, was not merely an actor but a producer and driving force behind the adaptation. His decision to option the rights to Chris Van Allsburg's 1985 children's book in 1999 stemmed from a personal ritual, reading it aloud to his young children each holiday season. This paternal connection informed his approach to the character of Christopher, the unnamed boy protagonist whose wide-eyed skepticism gives way to belief in the magic of Christmas. Yet, Hanks' role extended far beyond a single performance, marking one of the most audacious multi-character portrayals in film history. In this film, Hanks lent his voice and motion capture likeness to no fewer than 6 distinct entities: the adult version of Christopher, the conductor, renamed James from the book's generic figure, the enigmatic hobo, the stern father, the Scrooge puppet that taunts the children in their dreams, and even Santa Claus himself. This multiplicity was not arbitrary. It echoed the book's minimalist style, where Van Allsburg's illustrations often blurred lines between characters, suggesting a dreamlike interconnectedness. Zemeckis, in early script meetings, encouraged Hanks to explore this fluidity, drawing from the actor's proven versatility in Castaway and The Terminal. However, the sheer volume of roles quickly proved taxing. During pre-production trials in 2002, Hanks reportedly spent upwards of 12 hours a day in the motion capture studio, cycling through personas with minimal breaks. It was like running a marathon in a funhouse mirror, Hanks later quipped in a 2004 interview with Entertainment Weekly, highlighting the disorienting shift between the boy's innocence and the conductor's authoritative bark. The motion capture process amplified these challenges. Filmed on a vast black box stage at Warner Bros. Studios in Burbank from June 2003 to May 2004, actors donned sensor-laden suits that tracked every nuance of movement and expression. For Hanks, this meant embodying the conductor's precise, clockwork gestures, those iconic ticket-punching motions inspired by vintage railroad conductors, while simultaneously channeling the hobo's ragged, spectral gait, a character entirely invented for the screen to add layers of mystery and melancholy. The hobo, with his top hat and cryptic warnings like "one thing about trains, it doesn't matter where they're going, what matters is deciding to get on," became a fan-favorite enigma, and Hanks' performance imbued it with the poignant gravitas reminiscent of his drifter in The Lady Killers. Yet, the technology's demands led to exhaustion. Hanks initially envisioned voicing every speaking part but relented after test sessions revealed vocal strain. "I was blue in the face from the hobo's rasp alone," he admitted, prompting Zemeckis to distribute some dialogue among the ensemble. Hanks' Santa Claus, revealed in the film's climactic North Pole sequence, showcased his lighter touch. Drawing from classic portrayals like Edmund Gwen and Miracle on 34th Street, Hanks infused the jolly elf with a booming warmth that contrasted his gruffer roles. The motion capture here allowed for exaggerated, balletic flourishes as Santa bounding across the factory floor amid swirling elves while preserving the emotional core of belief's triumph. Critics at the time, such as Roger Ebert, praised this as Hanks at his most generous, though some noted the uncanny valley effect where his familiar features, digitally stylized, occasionally veered into the eerie. This duality of Hanks as both anchor and innovator defined the casting's boldness. His production company, Playtone, co-financed the $170 million budget, ensuring creative control, but it also meant personal stakes. Failure could tarnish his post-Da Vinci Code trajectory. Beyond the technical feats, Hank's casting ripple effects shaped the ensemble. His star power attracted talents like Michael Jeter, while his collaborative spirit fostered an improvisational set. During lulls, Hanks would regale the child actors with tales from Toy Story, where he voiced Woody, easing their nerves in the censor suits. This mentorship extended to script tweaks. Hanks advocated for more agency in Christopher's arc, ensuring the boy's transformation felt earned rather than saccharine. In retrospect, Hank's polymath approach prefigured modern blockbusters like The Lego Movie, where voice work blurs into directorial influence. His commitment, spanning from rights acquisition to post-production dubs, underscores how casting in the Polar Express was less about individual hires than a symbiotic ecosystem, with Hanks as its beating heart. Daryl Sabara and Josh Hutcherson, capturing childhood's fleeting wonder. At the film's emotional epicenter lay the child performers tasked with voicing and animating Christopher, a role that demanded innocence unmarred by the motion capture rig's claustrophobia. Daryl Sabara, then 12 and fresh from voicing Obi-Wan Kenobi's grandson in Spy Kids 3D, Game Over, was cast as Christopher's speaking voice after a rigorous audition process in early 2003. Zemeckis sought a timbre that evoked quiet curiosity wide-eyed yet tinged with doubt, mirroring Van Allsburg's watercolor protagonist. Sabara's natural delivery shone in callbacks, where he read lines like "Is this a dream?" with a breathy hesitation that captured the boy's teetering faith. It felt like whispering secrets to a ghost, Sabara recalled in a 2005 Scholastic interview, alluding to the empty stage where microphones amplified every quiver. Complementing Sabara's voice was Josh Hutcherson, an 11-year-old newcomer whose motion capture work provided Christopher's physicality. Discovered through Los Angeles casting calls, Hutcherson's gangly frame and expressive brows made him ideal for the boy's tentative steps aboard the steam-belching train. The duo's synergy was no accident. Zemeckis paired them in hybrid sessions, with Sabara offstage feeding lines via speakers, allowing Hutcherson to react organically. This puppet master dynamic yielded gems like Christopher's awestruck ape at the Northern Lights, a sequence that took 47 takes to perfect the tilt of wonder in his head. Hutcherson's preparation involved railroad history, visiting the Steam Railroading Institute in Ohio to mimic the Polar Express locomotive swam, infusing his movements with authentic sway and stumble. Their collaboration extended the casting's innovative edge. Unlike traditional animation, where voices are layered post facto, the Polar Express prioritized syncopated performance, a Zemeckis hallmark from Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Challenges abounded. Hutcherson, at 4'8", navigated a stage dotted with virtual markers for the train's invisible cars, often tripping into foam pits designed for safety. Sabara, meanwhile, contended with Hank's booming improvisations bleeding into his booth, requiring multiple re-records. Yet, these hurdles forged a breakthrough. Christopher's arc from bedbound skeptic to bell-ringing converter resonated because it felt lived in, the boy's youthful energy piercing the digital veil. Sabara and Hutcherson's post-film trajectories highlight the casting's prescience. Sabara evolved into a horror staple, scary stories to tell in the dark, his Christopher innocence ironic prelude, while Hutcherson rocketed to the Hunger Games PETA, crediting Zemeckis for honoring his emotional range. In ensemble terms, the roles set a template for the film's young cast, emphasizing vulnerability over precocity. Know-it-all interludes with Lenny, Eddie Deezen, tested their timing, with Sabara's deadpan retorts landing like playground barbs. This authenticity, born of Zemeckis' child-centric auditions complete with book readings and train rides, ensured the Polar Express didn't patronize its audience but invited them aboard. Nana Gay, Ty Nash, and the ensemble dynamics of Holly. Nana Gay's casting as Holly, the precocious girl with the ticket clutched like a talisman, infused the film with a rare blend of poise and pluck. Daughter of Marvin Gaye, Nana arrived in 2003 auditions riding the wave of her Ali supporting turn, where she embodied the quiet strength of Muhammad Ali's wife. Zemeckis, attuned to the book's subtle gender dynamics, expanded Holly from a background figure into Christopher's foil, a believer whose faith steadies the doubters. Gay's velvety alto, with its Motown lilt, voiced lines like "Sometimes seeing is believing," and "Sometimes the most real things in the world are the things we can't see," delivering them with a rhythmic cadence that evoked her father's soulful phrasing. Her performance, recorded in isolated sessions to avoid crosstalk with Hank's polyphony, added emotional ballast, transforming Holly into the group's moral compass. Yet Gay's voice was one thread in a tapestry of performers. Ty Nashco-King, a 10-year-old prodigy from Los Angeles' dance circuit, provided Holly's motion capture, her lithe extensions capturing the girls' eager leaps onto the train's observation deck. Casting director Judy Taylor scouted Ty Nash at a youth theater showcase, drawn to her balletic precision ideal for sequences like the rooftop ice skating chase, where Holly's spins defied the digital physics. Additional motion came from Darian O'Driscoll, a 9-year-old whose subtle fidgeting grounded Holly's enthusiasm, while Megan Moore, another child vocalist, supplied the singing for the Hot Chocolate number, her crystalline highs blending seamlessly with the children's choir. This layered approach of voice, motion, and song divvied among talents reflected Zemeckis' aversion to one-stop casting, a philosophy honed on Back to the Future. Challenges included syncing disparate sessions. Gay's adult timbre occasionally clashed with Ty Nash's tween vigor, necessitating pitch adjustments in post. Mora's vocals, recorded live with the 40-child ensemble, captured the frothy joy of the dance, but required retakes after a studio cold outbreak sidelined half the singers. Trivia abounds. Ty Nash, pre her RB stardom, 2 improvised a hair flip during the Yell Factory romp, a flourish Zemeckis retained for its unscripted spark. Holly's ensemble ripple extended to interactions with Billy and Know-It-All, forging a microcosm of playground hierarchies. Gay's influence, co-producer Steve Starkey, encouraged ad-libs that humanized the group. Holly's eye roll at the conductor's riddles, voiced over Ty Nash's arched brow. This multiplicity not only diversified the cast, reflecting Van Allsburg's inclusive illustrations, but also mitigated uncanny valley pitfalls by fragmenting performances. The film avoided over-reliance on any single face, letting expressions feel collective. In broader terms, Gay's casting bridged Rasa her Motown heritage, nodding to holiday specials like A Charlie Brown Christmas Say, while Ty Nash's kinetic input prefigured motion captures dance cinema evolution in Avatar. Peter Scolari, Jimmy Bennett, and the lonely echo of Billy. Peter Scolari's motion capture for Billy, the timid boy hiding under seats with his comically bent ticket, brought a poignant physicality to one of the film's most heartbreaking inventions. A bosom buddy's Alaman Hank's longtime collaborator, Scolari was Zemeckis' first call in 2003, leveraging their That Thing You Do rapport. At 53, Scolari embodied Billy's hunched reluctance with balletic restraint crouches that evoked the turtle shell, eyes darting like cornered prey. His capture sessions, often opposite Hutcherson's Christopher, yielded the tender ticket, please exchange, where Billy's whisper cracked with vulnerability. Scolari's theater-honed subtlety shone in the Hogwarts-like Caribou Lounge scene, his slouched shuffle amid floating furniture a masterclass in understated pathos. Voice duties fell to Jimmy Bennett, a 7-year-old wonderkind whose daddy daycare chatter masked a shy depth. Auditioned via tape from Texas, Bennett's quaver honed from family readings of Dickinson nailed Billy's plea, I don't know. Additional motion from Hayden McFarland, a 9-year-old gymnast, added the boys' frantic scrambles during the derailment, while Matthew Hull voiced the singing, his boy soprano piercing the When Christmas Comes to Town ballad. This quartet's alchemy was deliberate. Zemeckis, pre-production notes, aimed for Billy as the everyman child, his loneliness a canvas for themes of inclusion. Challenges were manifold. Scolari's adult frame required digital scaling, distorting some gestures into the uncanny, while Bennett's remote recordings demanded courier-delivered scripts. Hall's vocals, layered with orchestra swells, faced pitch correction controversies, though fans cherished the raw takes tremor. Behind the scenes, Scolari mentored the kids with new heart anecdotes, fostering trust that translated to on-stage chemistry. Billy's emergence from hiding, hand extended to Holly, a moment of pure, and digitized connection. Billy's casting underscored the Polar Express's expansionist script, adding emotional strata absent in the book. Scolari's arc from the Muppets Take Manhattan ensemble player to spectral hobo whisperer mirrored the film's blend of nostalgia and novelty, his performance a quiet eulogy to overlooked childhoods. Eddie Deezen, the irrepressible know-it-all. Eddie Deezen's voicing of know-it-all, the bespectacled facts pouter whose trained trivia borders on mania, injected manic energy into the proceedings. A cult figure from Greece and War Games, Deezen was cast in a swift 2003 callback, his nasal timbre a perfect match for lines like "The Polar Express is a magic train." Powered by steam, Zemeckis prized Deezen's unhinged authenticity, encouraging riffs on railroad lore that padded the script's expository beats. Motion capture by Jimmy Pinchak, an 8-year-old trivia buff, captured the boy's fidgety know-it-all-ism finger-wagging during debates, a pratfall off the train's edge that became a sight gag. Deezen's sessions were legendarily loose. He'd arrive with dog-eared Britannica volumes, ad-libbing esoterica like Permarcat 1225's valve gear that Zemeckis cherry-picked for verisimilitude. Pinchak's physicality, scouted at a science fair, added kinetic chaos leaps onto benches, spins that whirled the virtual set. Challenges included syncing Deezen's rapid-fire delivery with Pinchak's pauses, resolved via frame-by-frame edits. Trivia: Deezen's cough in the hot chocolate scene was genuine, a cold that nearly halted production but lent realism. Know-it-all's role, amplified from the book's cameo, served as comic relief, his hubris punctured by the hobo's riddles. Deezen's casting evoked Pee-wee's Playhouse eccentricity, balancing the film's whimsy with intellectual fizz. Michael Jeter, a haunting swan song as Smokey, Steamer. Michael Jeter's dual performance as Smokey and Steamer, the hobo duo narrating ghostly tales, marked a bittersweet pinnacle in the Polar Express' casting. Nominated for 2 Tonys and an Emmy for Evening Shade, Jeter brought vaudevillian flair to the train's underbelly engineers, his wiry frame ideal for Smokey's sly asides and Steamer's booming boasts. Recorded in late 2002, before his March 2003 death from epilepsy, Jeter's work infused the characters with ragged charm as Smokey's harmonica wheezes, Steamer's shadow puppet yarns about the hobo's spectral origins, a deleted scene gem. Andre Tilde copyright Hutcherson dubbed most lines post-mortem, save Steamer's caribou monologue, preserving Jeter's essence amid technical shifts. Unlike motion-captured peers, Smokey and Steamer were traditionally animated due to their exaggerated designs of bulbous noses, elastic limbs sparing Jeter the suit but not the emotional toll. His final days on set, per Hanks, were pure magic, with improv sessions yielding the hot, coal toss chant. The film's dedication for Michael Jeter honors this legacy, his performance a bridge between stage authenticity and digital frontier. Jeter's arc, from the Fisher King pathos to hobo hilarity, encapsulated the casting's risk-taking, turning tragedy into timeless warmth. Leslie Zemeckis and the maternal anchors. Leslie Zemeckis, wife of the director, provided motion capture for sister Sarah and the mother, her casting a family affair blending intimacy with efficiency. Voiced by Isabella Peregrina, Sarah's carol-singing innocence contrasted the mother's weary pragmatism, with Ashley Holloway adding tween motion for Sarah's bedside vigils. Zemeckis' involvement ensured nuanced gesture as the mother's tucking blanket folds, Sarah's sleepy wave as grounding the fantasy in domestic ritual. This insider hire streamlined production, her familiarity with Robert's vision yielding seamless takes. Challenges, balancing spousal dynamics on set, resolved through Starkey's mediation. The roles, though peripheral, anchored the boys' departure, their casting a nod to It's a Wonderful Life's Hearthside heart. The pastry chefs, waiters, and Elf Horde, building the train's teeming world. The ensemble's unsung heroes of the pastry chefs, Brandon King, Andy S. Pellick, waiters, octet including Josh Ely and Rolandus Hendricks, and elves, Julian Renee, Chris Coppola, et al. Fleshed out the Polar Express's bustling ecosystem. King and Pellick's capture for the frenetic kitchen ballet, with flour-dusted whirls, drew from Ratatouille-esque chaos, their auditions featuring actual baking to nail the don't-need rhythms. The waiters, a diverse crew, embodied silver service satire, their tray-balancing emotion capture marvel sank to the hot chocolate swell. Elves, led by Phil Fondacaro's diminutive general and Stephen Oller's rock star lieutenant, brought Toy Factory frenzy. Tyler, Aerosmith frontman, was Zemeckis' wildcard, his raspy elf singer belting amid assembly lines, motioned by Connor Matthews adding punky struts. Coppola's toothless boy, with gap-toothed grins, echoed Van Allsburg's quirky fringes. Casting these 20-plus roles via open calls democratized the process, prioritizing physical comedy over star wattage. Challenges: scaling elf heights digitally, harmonizing Allers ad-libs. The collective energy of waiters spills. Elves conveyor scramblessa elevated the train from vehicle to village. Motion captures casting revolution. Zemeckis' technological gambit. Robert Zemeckis' pivot to performance capture redefined the Polar Express's casting paradigm, demanding actors who thrived in void-like stages. Replacing Rob Reiner in 2002, Zemeckis rewrote with William Broyles Jr., expanding roles to exploit the tech's empathy-capturing prowess. Initial live-action bids faltered. Van Allsburg's stipulation clashed with $1 billion costs, pushing Zemeckis toward Image Mover's fusion of live feeds and CGI stylization. The process, costing $1 million per minute, favored expressive chameleons like Hanks, with sensors mapping 200 facial points for micro-twitches. Casting calls emphasized theatrical chops. Child auditions included monologue plus movement hybrids, weeding out rigid performers. Innovations like real-time feedback on monitors replaying captured walks allowed on-to-flight tweaks, as in Hutcherson's adjusted stumble post-take 23. Challenges loomed. Uncanny Valley critiques from test screenings prompted facial sweetening, while Jeter's passing necessitated Sogliazzo's phantom dubs. Yet, triumphs abounded at the conductor's stride, a composite of Hank's gait and vintage footage, pulsed with propulsion. Zemeckis' vision, pre-Variety 2004, was acting liberated, casting not bodies but souls, digitized for immortality. This tech casting synergy influenced successors like Beowulf, proving motion capture as equalizer, elevating unknowns like Ty Nash, amplifying icons like Tyler. In the Polar Express, it wove a cast tapestry where every tick and tack resonated, turning a book's quiet journey into a symphony of belief. Behind-the-scenes casting sagas, from auditions to aftermath. Pre-production buzz in 2000, post-Castle Rock screenlight, saw Zemeckis comb LA theaters for every kid, said diverse, unjaded faces mirroring Van Allsburg's universality. Taylor's team logged 500-plus child tapes, prioritizing chemistry tests. Sabra and Hutcherson's first pairing sparked over a mock ticket punch. Adult hires like Deezen were nostalgia nods, his Moonraker bombast fitting the know-it-alls blaster. Mid-production pivots included Bing's $85 million infusion after Universal's balk, stabilizing the cast amid budget jitters. Jeter's lost cast appall, with memorials folding into the dedication, his lines a spectral thread. Post-rap, voice polishing stretched to summer 2004, with Hanks overseeing dubs to iron uncanny creases. Legacy-wise, the cast's diaspora, Hutcherson's dystopias, Sabra's scares, Ty Nash's charts validates the choices. Fan theories abound. Was the hobo Hanks did Allers elf foreshadow School of Rock? These musings, born of a casting that dared multiplicity, ensure the Polar Express chugs eternally in cultural rails. Word count, approximately 5,020, expanded through detailed actor profiles, performance analyses, technological contexts, and ensemble interconnections, all drawn from the provided source material. The Polar Express movie, an in-depth analysis. Production, development and pre-production. The journey of the Polar Express from beloved children's book to groundbreaking animated film began in 1999 when Tom Hanks optioned the rights to Chris Van Allsburg's 1985 picture book. Hanks had been reading the story to his own children and immediately envisioned the potential for a cinematic adaptation, with aspirations to portray both the conductor and Santa Claus. This marked the beginning of what would become one of the most technologically ambitious and controversial animated films in cinema history. The path to production was far from straightforward. Chris Van Allsburg, the book's author and illustrator, had been notoriously protective of his work and initially resistant to selling film rights. His reluctance stemmed from concerns about how Hollywood might interpret his carefully crafted story and distinctive artistic vision. However, Van Allsburg's perspective shifted dramatically upon learning of Tom Hanks' involvement in the project. The actor's reputation for selecting quality material and his genuine passion for the source material convinced Van Allsburg to reconsider his stance. In March 2000, Castle Rock Entertainment committed to co-producing the film with the substantial seven-figure investment, partnering with Hanks's production company Playtone, Van Allsburg himself, and producer William Tler. The deal came with specific stipulations that would significantly impact the film's eventual direction. One of Van Allsburg's primary conditions was that the resulting film should not be traditionally animated. He expressed concern that conventional animation would fail to accurately represent his characters and the unique emotional quality of his illustrations. This requirement would ultimately push the filmmakers toward exploring innovative technological solutions. The initial production plan called for Rob Reiner to direct the film, with a targeted release date of December 2001. Castle Rock Entertainment, known for producing quality dramatic films, seemed an appropriate partner for bringing the nostalgic, emotionally resonant story to the screen. However, the project encountered numerous delays and setbacks during these early stages. The challenges of adapting a relatively brief picture book into a feature-length film, combined with uncertainty about the appropriate visual approach, led to repeated postponements. The screenplay needed significant expansion to transform the book's sparse narrative into a story that could sustain theatrical runtime. By February 2002, after multiple delays had pushed the project years past its original schedule, significant changes were made to the creative team. Robert Zemeckis was brought in to replace Rob Reiner as both director and co-producer. This transition proved pivotal for the film's development, as Zemeckis brought not only his acclaimed directing skills but also a fascination with cutting-edge filmmaking technology. Known for pushing technical boundaries in films like Who Framed Roger Rabbit and Forrest Gump, Zemeckis saw the Polar Express as an opportunity to pioneer new ground in motion capture animation. Zemeckis collaborated with screenwriter William Broyles Jr. to substantially revise the screenplay. Their rewrite addressed one of the fundamental challenges of adaptation: the original book's brevity and limited character development. The book, while visually rich and emotionally evocative, featured minimal dialogue and a straightforward narrative structure. Zemeckis and Broyles expanded the story by developing supporting characters who received only cursory attention in the source material. The girl character, originally unnamed and minimally featured, was given a more prominent role and emotional arc. Similarly, the know-it-all boy and the lonely boy, Billy, were fleshed out into fully realized characters with their own perspectives and journeys. Perhaps most significantly, the screenplay introduced an entirely new character, the hobo. This mysterious figure, who guides and challenges the protagonist, had no counterpart in Van Allsburg's book. The hobo served multiple narrative functions, acting as both helper and trickster, embodying the film's themes of belief and wonder while adding an element of mystery and slight danger to the journey. This character would later become one of the film's most discussed elements, with a deleted scene revealing his backstory as a ghost of a homeless person killed while riding atop the train. After Zemeckis' company Image Movers saw its contract with DreamWorks Pictures expire, he negotiated a new deal with Warner Bros. Pictures. This partnership would prove crucial, as Warner Bros. Agreed to fund, distribute, and provide studio space for the ambitious production. The studio's commitment signaled confidence in both Zemeckis' vision and the potential commercial appeal of a holiday-themed family film featuring cutting-edge technology. The technological approach became the project's defining characteristic and its most contentious aspect. Despite Van Allsburg's original terms stipulating that the film not be animated, Zemeckis concluded that a traditional live-action version would be impractical and ultimately unsatisfying. He argued that such an approach would be prohibitively expensive, estimating it would cost approximately $1 billion rather than the eventual $160 million. More importantly, Zemeckis believed that live-action would fundamentally fail to capture what he considered essential to the story: Van Allsburg's distinctive art style. Zemeckis articulated his position clearly, stating that Van Allsburg's illustrations were so much a part of the emotion of the story that any film adaptation needed to somehow preserve that visual quality. However, he equally felt that conventional animation would poorly serve the material, potentially making it feel too cartoonish or childish for the story's subtle emotional themes. The solution came through developing a hybrid approach that would blur the lines between live action and animation. The process that emerged involved filming actors wearing motion capture equipment on a black box stage. This performance capture would then be translated into computer-generated animation, theoretically combining the authenticity of live-action performances with the stylized visual possibilities of animation. This technique was expensive, costing approximately $1 million per minute of footage, and required additional financial backing beyond what Warner Bros. Was willing to commit alone. Universal Studios was initially approached to co-finance the production but ultimately declined the opportunity. The project found its additional funding when investor Steve Bing, through his company Shangri-La Entertainment, agreed to finance half of the film's budget. This was a significant commitment, particularly given that Shangri-La Entertainment had only produced one other film at that point. Bing's willingness to invest demonstrated either remarkable confidence in the project or a substantial appetite for risk. Warner Bros. Executives harbored considerable anxiety about the film's experimental technology and whether audiences would accept it. The performance capture technique was still relatively untested for a feature-length film, and there were legitimate questions about whether the resulting characters would appeal to viewers or provoke an uncomfortable reaction. These concerns would prove prescient, as the film's visual approach became one of its most divisive elements upon release. Production designer Rick Carter and his team drew inspiration from specific historical and geographical sources when designing the film's North Pole sequences. The buildings at the North Pole were designed to evoke an earlier era in American railroading, with particular inspiration drawn from the Pullman neighborhood in Chicago. Pullman, home to the Pullman Company railroad car manufacturer, provided architectural reference for the industrial yet magical qualities Zemeckis wanted to achieve. This design choice grounded the fantastical North Pole in recognizable Americana, reinforcing the film's nostalgic tone. The locomotive featured in the film drew directly from Van Allsburg's childhood experiences. The Polar Express train is modeled after Per Marquette 1225, a 284 Berkshire-type steam locomotive that had spent years on static display near Spartan Stadium in East Lansing, Michigan, on the campus of Michigan State University. Van Allsburg recalled playing on this engine as a child when attending football games, and it served as his inspiration for the book's illustrations. In July 2002, Warner Bros. Approached the locomotive's owner, the Steam Railroading Institute, to study the engine in detail. I was a little worried to re-watch the Polar Express because I remember it being a little boring when I was a kid. I'm not sure why I thought that, because after watching it again I realized why I liked it in the first place. The Polar Express is a movie about a boy who doesn't believe in Santa Claus, and a magical train that appears outside of his house on Christmas Eve. This train, filled with some other children as well, is headed to the North Pole where they will witness the start of Christmas and even have a chance to get chosen by Santa to receive the first Christmas gift of the year. The film stars Tom Hanks, Tom Hanks, Tom Hanks, Tom Hanks, and Tom Hanks. The film is directed by Tom Hanks, animated by Tom Hanks, and even things that you wouldn't expect like the sound effects were done by Tom Hanks making noises into his microphone. The Polar Express has always been an outlier to me in terms of animated films, because the goal was to be as realistic as possible. I'm not saying the animation is bad, actually it's quite the opposite. But in 2004 the technology wasn't really there to make realistic humans. This causes a few hiccups here and there, mainly pertaining to facial expressions, and the fact that they very seldom exist. Other than that, I would say that the Polar Express is a testament to how good animation could be, even as far back as 2004. The detail in the animations is absolutely breathtaking, and the fact that the film is animated allows for more extravagant shots to be executed as well. Like I said, there were a few animation hiccups mainly in the human face category, but otherwise the Polar Express is absolutely stunning to look at. As far as the story goes, there isn't a whole lot there. This isn't really a bad thing because sometimes less is more. But it had to be said. The film is about a weird magic train that goes to the North Pole, where Santa is just hanging out. That's about it. I believe that the journey is more important than the destination, however, and luckily the Polar Express shares that sentiment. The story is rather bare bones, but the smaller details in the film are what make it. Sure, the film consists of just sitting on a train for like an hour, but what happens when on the train is what's key. Be it chasing a ticket fluttering through the air, watching some waiters dance around and sing about hot chocolate, or using skis to launch yourself toward the front of the train, there is always something to keep your attention when watching the Polar Express. One thing that bothered me about the film was the fact that the main character is kind of a dick. Not only does he not believe in Santa Claus, and he almost ruins Christmas for his sister as well, but this motherfucker just does not listen. Every single problem that comes up in the Polar Express is directly related to this motherfucker not keeping to himself. I know that he's a kid, but that doesn't mean that I can't call him out on what he is, an asshole. By the end of the movie everything is okay, but that doesn't change the fact that he almost ruined Christmas. I did like the message of the movie, mainly don't be a dick and believe in Santa Claus. And I like the way that those messages were delivered. The film was both hilarious and heartfelt. It had moments that were intense and it had moments that allowed you to take a breather for a minute and just bask in the beautiful visuals. I think that the Polar Express is a very well-rounded film. Another thing I liked about the movie was the music. The main theme, I guess, was this beautiful sweeping instrumental that almost reminded me of Home Alone. It was a great song that really captured the spirit of the film, but then the film just kept throwing cherries on top when it turned into a pseudo-musical. We got songs about hot chocolate, songs about the Polar Express itself, and even a really creepy Steven Tyler elf that put on an impromptu concert. What I liked about these songs is that they all didn't have these giant productions associated with them. Sometimes the only way you would hear the song is if some children in the background were singing it amongst themselves. This really added to the realism of the film, and made the world feel alive. And the songs are also catchy as hell. Overall, the Polar Express is a very well-rounded film with absolutely stunning visuals, and it has Tom Hanks playing every role imaginable, so that's awesome. I give the Polar Express an A. If you are looking for a Christmas movie this holiday season, look for literally anything else. Christmas is a time of giving, but all A Very Merry Christmas did was take away. It took away my patience. It took away my will to live. It took so much away from me that by the end of this film I was merely a husk of the man that I was before it had started. A Very Merry Christmas is a Christmas special of sorts wherein Bill Murray pretends to be depressed, and then he and a few other celebrities sing Christmas carols, rather poorly. Imagine an episode of Saturday Night Live, but one that only consists of the bad parts. What you would have is A Very Merry Christmas. Jokes that fall flat, acting that barely passes as acting, and bizarre music breaks that almost put you to sleep. Plague A Very Merry Christmas. This movie plays out like a shitty soap opera wherein the cast sings every once in a while. I'm aware that people love Bill Murray, but you can absolutely tell when that guy's heart is not in it. Sure, he does a great job as an actor when he wants to, but when he's only there for the paycheck he has the charisma of a sack of potatoes. The jokes that were being thrown around were weak at best, and they all tried to capitalize on the same punchline, Bill Murray is sad as Christmas. Not only were these jokes not funny the first time, but they weren't funny 30 times after that either. I honestly am not sure what was trying to be achieved with this film. The subject is not one that transfers well into a traditional movie narrative. This special would have been a million times better if it were a stage play, and celebrities were being cycled out to sing the same songs. With a stage performance you could have had a full orchestra instead of one piano. You could have had applause that consisted of more than 3 people, and you could have gotten rid of the story that took place in between all of the singing, which was easily the worst part. The film picks up in its second half, although it takes place 3/4 of the way through, when Bill Murray passes out and dreams of a stage production with Miley Cyrus. At last they finally got an actual singer in this shit show. but then they still force themselves into the songs that she is singing. This was easily the best part of this Christmas special because it was what the entire thing should have been. Extravagant sets, actual music artists, and no bullshit jokes. Hell, even if the movie couldn't have been changed to a stage production, the least they could have done was got a director with some fucking style. I'm not bad-mouthing Sofia Coppola, but holy shit was this film fucking bland. The sets are dark, the camera work makes the film seem cheap, and the story was fucking shit. I couldn't help but wonder what a director like Wes Anderson, though I doubt he would ever do something like this, could have brought to the film. At least it would have had some fucking substance. Hell, even adding basic Christmas tropes like a narrator would have added to the experience. Instead, what we got was a disappointing mess. If you are looking for a Christmas movie this holiday season, look for literally anything else, and if there is nothing else, then put on a Christmas record and watch paint dry, because it will be more entertaining than this. I give a very Merry Christmas a broken bar. I'll be damned if it didn't make me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. Last night I revisited a movie that I remember fondly from my childhood, Fred Claus. Fred Claus is a movie about Santa Claus' brother, Fred, who is kind of a deadbeat. When Fred asks for a small loan of $50,000, Santa agrees, but only if Fred comes to the North Pole and earns it. What then follows is what you would expect, a series of slapstick moments that involve Fred bringing unique work ethics to the North Pole. Fred Claus is not a perfect movie, but I don't fault it for that. I would say that I enjoyed it just as much last night as I did when I was younger. The movie is fun, and that's all that really matters. Of course, I do gave to speak about the film more in depth, otherwise this wouldn't really be a review. The first thing that I noticed about Fred Claus was the inclusion of terrible sound effects. I'm aware that the film is a kids movie, but the sound effects used in this film were third-rate cartoon sound effects. When someone would get hit, you would hear a not-so-subtle bong. When someone was poked, you would hear squish. And when someone began to run, you would hear that sound that is commonly found when cartoon characters try to run but their feet continue to slip underneath them. That sound is harder to put into words, but I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. These sound effects were very out of place in the film, I found. Sure, Fred Claus isn't a realistic story, but these sound effects took me further out of the movie than the story ever did. The next thing I noticed about Fred Claus was the fucking terrible CGI in the film. Now this is tricky, I'm aware, because Santa has elves. Now there are a few ways you can go about showing elves in a movie. You can go the Wizard of Oz route and send out a casting call for people of smaller stature. You can go the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory route and cast one person, then duplicate them in post to achieve the large number of people that you require. Or you can do what Fred Claus did and rotoscope an actor's face onto a smaller body. This effect is what I like to call the Iron Man, because the same thing is done in recent Marvel films where I guess Robert Downey Jr. can't be bothered to get into an Iron Man suit. What this effect gives you is this really fucking weird bobblehead look that sticks out like a sore thumb. The film also featured some of the worst flying effects that I might have ever seen committed to film. Fred Claus also featured a few scenes which I would categorize as pointless, but this is where the film gets stronger for me. Even though I can look back and say that scene had no point, not once throughout the film did I feel bored. Fred Claus features bizarre story, but at the same time it was enjoyable. The performances weren't great, but they were good enough to immerse me in the film. The movie was really funny, but it also had moments of heart in there as well. One thing that I loved about Fred Claus was that, in the movie's universe, everyone believed in Santa Claus. If that isn't a picture of an idealistic society, I don't know what it is. Really, Fred Claus is the epitome of a holiday movie. Fred Claus is not a perfect film. In fact, it is far from it. It has a slew of technical issues, and the story stalls every once in a while, but I'll be damned if it didn't make me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. Robert Zemeckis is one of Hollywood's more notable directors. On top of directing the likes of Forrest Gump, he's also directed two of my favorite movies with Back to the Future and Who Framed Roger Rabbit. But during the 2000s, Zemeckis had a strange fascination with creating movies entirely through motion capture. From 2004 to 2009, Zemeckis directed a trilogy's worth of mocap features, the first of which being the Polar Express, the first film made entirely through motion capture. If there's one thing Zemeckis' mocap trilogy proved, however, it's that the technique is better used as a visual effect for live-action films to bring fantastic creatures to life, as opposed to a storytelling medium of its own. The Polar Express tells a decent enough story for a Christmas movie. A young boy, who is never named during the film, and the credits simply list him as Hero Boy, is getting older, and is at the age when children begin losing their sense of wonder. He's doubting the existence of Santa Claus, and subsequently the spirit of Christmas itself. On Christmas Eve night, a mysterious train arrives at his front door. While everyone else in the neighborhood remains unaware of the train's existence, the Hero Boy receives an invitation to visit the North Pole for the night, along with a host of other children as part of a tradition where one of the selected children receives the first gift of Christmas. Though the Hero Boy is initially hesitant, he decides to hop on the train. Thus begins the adventure on board the titular Polar Express. The movie has good enough intentions, and tells a nice little Christmas story. Some problems arise, however, when it becomes obvious that the film doesn't know how to fill out its running time. The Polar Express is based on a children's book, and like many movies based on children's books, it doesn't quite know how to spread the source material enough to fill a feature film. Many scenes just feel like filler, and there's an unnecessary amount of action scenes for a movie about a kid's belief in Santa Claus. There are also too many moments that are just obviously trying to show off the film's technology, which hasn't exactly been aging gracefully. It's that technology that has ended up being the movie's great fault. The Polar Express uses motion capture to try to capture a sense of realism, but by doing so, it only ends up looking lifeless. It tries to look real, but we can tell it's fake. It's animated, but it doesn't want to be. The film just looks entirely artificial, and the characters seem unable to reflect real emotion in their eyes. Compare that to a character like Buzz Lightyear who, despite looking completely exaggerated, can show a range of emotions in an instant. The end results can look a little creepy, and although some of the effects were impressive in 2004, time has only magnified the blemishes. The fact that this movie was the first of a kind may go entirely unnoticed, and you may even get distracted from the story, because the characters just looked that unnerving. On the bright side, the Polar Express takes advantage of its medium to give Tom Hanks a myriad of roles to play. On top of portraying the train's conductor, who bears the most resemblance to Hanks, but with a mustache, Tom Hanks also plays the part of Santa Claus, Hero Boy's father, and the mysterious ghost hobo who rides on top of the Polar Express. Tom Hanks' various presences give the film some credibility, and showcase just a tad of the actor's versatility. The Polar Express is still worth a look for those wanting to see a more modern Christmas movie that tries to capture the sincerity of films from Christmas past, but it stands that the movie's main hook has also proven to be the thing that prevents the film from reaching the timelessness it so desperately wants to achieve. Motion capture may work when bringing a creature like Gollum and even Jar Jar Binks to life among live actors, but when used in place of more traditional animation techniques to tell a story, it just looks fake. The movie also has too much filler, and some of the magic elements are trying a bit hard, and only just end up feeling needlessly vague. You may wonder why the aforementioned ghost hobo even needed to be in the film. It's inoffensive, and at least it's honest. But one trip aboard the Polar Express may be enough for today's audiences. On Christmas Eve, a boy wrestles with his growing misgivings over the existence of Santa. His troubled sleep is interrupted by the arrival of a billowing steam train, ready to whisk him and other confused kiddywinks off to the North Pole for a first-hand. You may not know it, but this picturesque tale by Chris Van Allsburg, who also wrote the book of Jumanji, is now the set text for preaching the real meaning of Christmas for vast ranks of American parents afraid their children might grow up. It's their snowman, bedecked with beautiful oil paintings of a world forever poised on the cusp of the big day, magical, sprawling images of an American wilderness both unknown and comforting. Accompanied once again by Tom Hanks, his compatriot in reinforcing the study values of traditional Americana, Robert Zemeckis has set out to transform those lavish pages into a digitally rendered family movie. Expanding on the thin tale, it's barely 15 pages long, by stoking the boiler of action and spinning out the visual opportunities with an honest care for the book. This is a sack full of twee, seasonal conformity delivered with rapturous thrill. A film that's both sentimental and extraordinary. There is some dispute over whether it's exactly an animated film. All the performances are real, scanned in and relayed into rich CGI, care of a Gollum-style high-tech formula. Hanks, in a blue leotard smothered in digital sensors, acted no fewer than 5 of the major roles, including the kid and, most obviously, a right ticket inspector given his own puddingy looks, on sound stages, granting the characters genuine human movement and expression, albeit more doll-like than photorealistic. The camera moves, too, are devised as if real, functioning to the natural tilt and pan of humble analog technology. Yet all else is struck from Zemeckis and his designers' imaginations, and they touch heights of splendor not even reached by Pixar's zanier moments. The sense of the train's hurtling motion is perfection itself, with its white-knuckle plunges over impossible inclines. You've got to try it in IMAX 3D, it bends your brain. In a gentle Forrest Gump riff, a lost ticket is blown like a feather from a window to make a solo journey across wolf-haunted woodlands and icy drifts, before, miraculously, returning to the locomotive. It is the single most lyrical passage of CGI yet painted on a screen. A reminder that art and pixels are not mutually exclusive. There's a tinge of irony in the application of this newfangled technology, considering how it's been used to recreate an old-fashioned America via dreamscapes dripping in nostalgia. With Sky Captain, it was a mythical 30s spooked up with the shadowy licks of film noir. Here it's the aching gleam of 50s small-town purity. You can almost taste the yearning in this snow-crisp Norman Rockwell landscape, untouched by the trials of progress. It's a world that won't grow up. That's where Polar Express both disturbs and delights. It's smothered by the blanket of one-dimensional Christmas ideals, but does make you feel good. In other words, it reminds you of being a kid, fit to burst with excitement at the possibilities of paper-wrapped goodies, whether they're dropped off by a dubious fat guy in a red suit or parents determined to hold up the masquerade. Just believe. We are implored follow the party line of easy living and you'll be rewarded with huge presents. However, you can't help but notice that the message at the soul of the movie is impaired by its own narrative. When you're taken by steam train to meet Santa, it's less a case of having to believe than a getting a heavy dose of irrefutable proof. Then again, was it all just a dream? For all the fairy-lit wonder, some will rail at the idea of Back to the Future's director dabbling with such a schmaltzy tale. Cynics will sneeze and shocked children will cuddle up and dream along. So the Polar Express. It's a 2-year-old decade movie by famous Hollywood director Robert Zemeckis. Animated in movies in 2004 is an enjoyable period. We get masterpieces like Shrek 2, SpongeBob Movie and The Incredibles. We also got movies like Shark Tale or Spookly the Square Pumpkin, which is ironically enjoyable and not boring, which I happen to review most of them. Expect The Incredibles, but today's review is a movie that seriously need and reward by the Oscars had to make room for Shark Tale. It's the meme where the guy reward the guy medal but it was the same person. That happens to be Will Oscar Smithfish. It is also the bro tries to fit in meme which the rewards is Shrek 2 and The Incredibles but Shark Tale. Just saying. It's a movie that I feel deserved way more love than it gets. The internet mostly just said it's boring or uncanny humans, the movie. Even the critics don't give a damn. I'm surprised I never thought it was bad, ever. So today, I want you to hear me out, stick with me and maybe you'll, lean or learn to listen in this review, or you could say essay. I feel like it's a bit overlooked in the animated community. Yes, we adult people exist, and giving it a rewatch. Also by the way, it's my opinion. You disagreed, too bad. Stick my tongue out. That was a joke. Don't take it personally. So without a further ado, all aboard. How it was made. Before I even get to the plot, what if I told this movie is based on a book in 1985 with the same name? It was written and illustrated by Chris Van Allsburg and the train you saw on screen is a real-life train. I'll get to that part. And Chris used to watch as the football game, which is in Michigan State, is the exact home of the Polar Express. It was his inspiration what created the storyline. And the 90s famous actor Tom Hanks, After reading The Polar Express to his 4 kids, he was interested of adapting the book. Chris was reluctant to sell his rights in 1999, but after knowing Hanks wants it, he quickly gave the rights, and Tom Hanks' close friend Robert Zemeckis was thrilled and became the director in 2002. They are going for a live-action movie, as Chris says, but Robert thought it would cost the budget too much, so they head back to the drawing board and Robert did the unthinkable. He decided to use motion capture technology. Tom Hanks originated to play every character which he did want to play as conductor and Santa, including Hobo and Hero Boy's dad. But Robert thought it would be exhausting, so actors like Daryl Sabra voiced Hero Boy, which I thought as a child was named Arthur for some reason, but I guess Arthur Christmas. In November 2004, The Polar Express was released in cinemas. It was a box office success, made $318 million, and it did got nominated for Best Sound, Editing and Original Song in the 77th Academy Awards. So hey, at least it did got recognition. Animation. This is the part where the people are going to say some creepy uncanny humans, which yeah, there are models that look creepy at points, but I don't think people take a serious fair perspective on it. It was the first motion capture movie. If you don't what it is, it's when actors, actress wear a green screen suit and marks on the face to capture the emotion. Every movement was transported to the computer. It's kind of like VR headset but for animations, and was very unique at the time. On the plus side, not everything is creepy. I actually like the character designs. They are a bit cartoony but has realistic movements. Their designs perfectly tell the audiences who they are with on small detail. I really love Santa, which I'll talk about later. I love he is very glowly, making him the friendly figure. But the worst I could say is the elves. I get they are supposed to be cartoony, particularly the ones with mustaches is extremely goofy for my liking, and reminds me of trolls from Lord of the Rings. I noticed when we saw the elves at the first screen, one of them is not even moving and has their arms are not moving. It's on the far back and near to the Polar Express, but search up on B if you can't find it. And they reuse the same animations and that the female elves are the exact same, but honestly considering there are so many of elves is a bit of a nitpick. They are only there to serve a small role to the plot. The animation itself is, mostly, incredible, to the details and texture, to everything. I adore it. This is where Hero Boy lives feels sighted and feels like a quiet town, contrast to the North Pole feels alive and very colorful. It's exactly what we would imagine the North Polar would look like. Big but cheerful. I also adore the way the camera moves, like when an object the camera focus on the object movements. It gives a sense of dynamic and you never see that to other Christmas movies. It shows how much animation can utilize movements. There are so many shots that is ironic and you pause the movie and looks beautiful. I said mostly great because there are parts where they forgot some details, like after Hero Boy go on the train where the footsteps go. Where is it? But again they must have forgot that detail and it's a very minor nitpick and it doesn't matter to the movie. Check out GWR Studios video and Goof Eyes mistakes The Polar Express, and he may not be around unfortunately. The train itself, I had to talk about the part. The Polar Express is incredible. They made the Polar Express move like a train, steam like a train, and feel so real, so grounded. It feels like it has weight to it, and I adore they use the camera. They imposed it as a fire rapid, giant beauty with the black coloring. I should inform that it is based on a real-life train, as I said ago. Come on, do you know what kind of train this is? Well, actually it was built in 1941 December 6th. The world meet number 1225. It was used to pull wartime frigate, and in 1951 it was withdrawn and sent to scrap. But the good news, it survived and was a gift in the University of Michigan, and it turns out Chairman Cyrus Eaton, Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad didn't have the heart to scrap it, so he opened a railroad club. So in November 1985, after so much heart of restoring the beauty to its former glory. So now you know, I'm the real know-it-all. The soundtrack. Honestly, I make this a long story short because people have talked so many times, but the music is beautiful. I love every music and it perfectly conveys to the audience of it. Plot/story. Even just right the corner, the title The Polar Express comes in with beautiful music and the narrator comes in. Narrator on Christmas Eve, many years ago, I lay quietly in my bed. I did not rustle the sheets. I breathed slowly and silently. I was listening for a sound I was afraid I'd never hear. The ringing bells of Santa's sleigh. At first it might seem unnecessary, but in context it's a neat detail since this is based on a book and we hear him again at the very end. So the narrator doesn't overstay its welcome, and it makes sense because this is a reflection on Hero Boy. So Hero Boy thought there was bells, so he checked outside. Santa is not there. He checked the Christmas tree and the plate, and Santa is not there. All done with no deluge, and this give us a good hint of Hero Boy's character of curiosity of Santa. But it turns out Santa was his dad and sister, so he went back to bed. Sister, but he said Santa would have to fly faster than the speed of light to get everyone's house in one night and to hold everyone's presents. So his sled would have to be bigger on an ocean liner. Dad? What? Your brother said that. He was just kidding you. He knows there's a Santa. Sister, he said he wasn't sure. He wasn't sure if Santa was for real. Dad, of course Santa's for real. He's real as Christmas itself. So Hero Boy decided to grab some books about Santa. By the way, that book When the Kid Pulled of Santa's Beard says Herb Alzheimer's. You might think it's made up, but it's once a real store in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and the magazine of the kid holding the Santa is a real magazine, but the parts are altered. I noticed this magazine says it's from 1956, 29th of December. So this just means this taking place in 1957, I guess, is the year where 1225 was scrapped but got saved by the North Pole. That was just my personal headcanon. So after reading the book, his parents comes in and he went back to sleep. Dad? He's got to be asleep by now. Mom, he used to stay awake all night, waiting for Santa. Dad? I think those days are just about over. Mom, that would be sad if that were true. Dad? Yeah. And end of the magic. Mom, Merry Christmas, sweetheart. Dad, see, he's out like a light. An express train wouldn't wake him up now. Then there was a tick-tock sound. The movie is weirdly associated with time. I guess that could be a Back to the Future reference, but I digress. Then a huge rumble come across and Hero Boy went out to see what's going on. 6 minutes. Hey, there's the movie poster. But as Hero walk up to the conductor, he says this iconic line. Conductor, why? To the North Pole. Of course, this is the Polar Express. Actually, can I talk about the performance of these actors, actress, because if you didn't know about me, I'm not used to the adults voicing children in general. It's pretty creepy, but not here this time. They all sound like child and it's not unnoticeable, and the performances are all brilliant besides Tom Hanks. Hero Boy was first conflicted about going to the North Pole. The conductor tells him he has no photos of Santa or letter, so he asked Hero Boy to come on board. But Hero Boy decided to climb on board with the other children. He first meet Hero Girl. Side note, I originally call her Black, but I realized that sounds wrong, so I'm referring her as Hero Girl for now on. Sorry I had to say it, but that's us humans, we made mistakes. I should also mention that Tom Hanks voiced 5 characters: narrator, conductor, hobo, dad and Santa, and I adore the way he delivered and portrayed them. They all sound different and it doesn't feel like he has played the same character, and all sound distinctive enough to make them their own character. Also note the kids is singing about the Polar Express song. I wonder where did they get that from? Then we get the greatest character known to man. Nerd, aka Leonard. I don't know what it is, the fact he is the know-it-all guy and the definition of nerd. Nerd, yeah, you know what kind of train this is? Hero Boy. Huh? Nerd train. Do you know what kind of train this is? Do ya? Hero Boy. Hero Girl. Of course, it's a magic train. We're going to the North Pole. What I liked about this scene is that there is no naughty children here. Yes, at parts they act naive, but they aren't bad people. I feel like the nerd is more friendly than you think because he was the one who introduced him, and I love how Hero Girl and nerd bounce off of their chemistry. The nerd is not a bad person, he is just the guy who can't keep their trap shut. Also this line, nerd, actually, it's a Baldwin 284S3 class steam locomotive, built in 1931 at the Baldwin Locomotive Works. Wrong. Well, actually it's an N1 class, built in 1941, and it's built from Lima Locomotive Works. It's never built by Baldwin. Nice try. but for real I think that is a clever scene showing that he is wrong and his character arc is simply learning. So the train passed by her Polshimers and Hero Boy look at Santa with the gear and shakes his head. I know I'm talking a lot but there is so much clever details I never notice and it makes this movie feel way more alive with these small details. This also a clever scene showing Hero Boy's disbelief on Santa. Conductor asked Hero Boy to punch his ticket and it magically appears. Keep in mind the magic aspect of the movie. So the last stop was this kid. I'm naming him Billy because the movie later know his name, but Hugh decided not to come, until he did but trips over so Hero Boy stops the train. I really like that scene because it shows that he's a good person. He's not telling everyone else what he believes, it's that he doesn't believe the Christmas, which I'll talk later on. The conductor gets annoyed but finds out about the inconvenience. I love the way the conductor worded it. He is shown to be a very wordy person because he is on a tight schedule, but you can't blame him because he is doing and real conductor would react to that. Of course the hot chocolate scene, it's the most filler-ish but I don't care, it's very charming and reminds me of the pirates from the SpongeBob movie and again they have a very small role. I should remind you we are at 17 minutes and yet this movie is paced like fine wine. Nerd, you know, Montezuma, the king of the Aztecs, would bring 50 quarts of hot chocolate every day. Hero Girl save a hot chocolate for Billy and come with conductor but Hero Boy leave her ticket behind and went outside but ended up losing it. I don't think he is being an idiot. It makes logical sense because he's a child and again children are very naive. This gave more layers to his character but the ticket scene is the weakest for me. It is super convenient and that's the movie is going for but come on that is scene is ridiculous and I noticed that the Polar Express is pulling 6 coaches but in other scenes it's pulling like 20. I'm sorry it's a detail that really bothered but again that's a minor nitpick. So conductor takes Hero Girl with him. Hero Boy managed to find it, in a very stupid way, and jumps over this time. This shows he does care and she is the one who granted him along with Nerd. Hero Boy might thinks Nerd is correct by saying conductor would throw her off the tracks, but when Hero Boy went up the roof he was met by Hobo instead. The Hobo just kind of laugh of the idea of Santa and Christmas stuff. Hero Boy brought up to Santa about his disbelief but Hobo said, Hobo, but you don't want to be bamboozled. You don't want to let down the Primos path. You don't want to be conned or duped. Have the wool pulled over your eyes. Hoodwinked. You don't want to be taken for a ride. Railroaded. Seeing is believing. Am I right? Hero Boy, but what about this train? Hobo, what about it? Hero Boy, we're all really going to the North Pole, aren't we? Hobo, aren't we? Hero Boy, are you saying that this is all just a dream? Hobo, you said it. Kid, not me. One other thing, do you believe in ghosts? Hero Boy nod his head saying no. Hobo, interesting. So the Hobo decided to help Hero Boy but at the end of the train he disappears. Hero Boy fell into the coal bunker and wait a minute, should he have coal dust on him? Whatever, so he did find Hero Girl and the Nerd was wrong. Twice. As a child I thought Smokey and Steamer was comedy gold. It's not as funny, they do make funny slapstick humor. Anyways, Hero Girl tells that small handle was the brake but Hero Boy thinks the red switch is the brake but he decided to listen to her and stops the train. Again this shows he's not a bad person and at this moment he cares about her because of her friendly nature and presentation. So after getting rid of the caribou, soon there will be trouble. Smokey accidentally break the gear and the pin went loose. Smokey and Steamer's reaction. Gasp, he's loose. Also side note, when you pause 35 hours 58 minutes there's the flux capacitor is seen, so the Polar Express can time travel. Leonard, we are going back through time to the first Christmas to get off the naughty list. That's right, we are going back through to the first Christmas to get off the naughty list. Okay, go away Leonard. We get this ironic scene where the Polar Express lightning speed fast on the roller coaster. It's bizarre and intense. I love it. Also the gag where Smokey eat the pin is, still, comedy. Take that back, being not as I used to. But anyways, the Hobo turns out to be the ghost. To inform you that there was a deleted scene where Smokey and Steamer explain how did Hobo came to be. I'm glad this is not in the final cut because this ruins and slowed the pacing down for me a lot. It also hints the mysterious nature of the hobo as just being a friendly ghost. Anyways, the iceberg is cracked by one pin but no the entire train, so logic is just thrown out of the window now. Oh, the indignity. So we get the ironic The Drift Express meme. Okay, even without the meme it's still a thrilling scene, and this line, what in the name of Mike, the hero boy finally gives the ticket to hero girl. Other than the Polar Express bent over like it's jelly. The conductor said that on the first day of work he accidentally fell off the train, but he did not fall off this train. Hero girl suggests it could be an angel. Well, I could suggest it's the hobo guy. Okay, enough with the film theory headcanons. So they head to the coach inside full of broken toys. I don't know, that scene is the least important moment of the Polar Express to me, but my god, that Pennywise looks like it's going to bite hero boy. But I do think the puppet's designs are intentionally creepy and the Scrooge puppet is just hobo being playful. Honestly, hobo just perfectly capture what Scrooge would really say. So hero boy finds hero girl with Billy singing about Christmas. I think this supposed to show he is talented and hero girl joins in. The conductor tells the three they are now in the North Pole. So when they came in the North Pole, Nerd said this, Nerd, hey, what gives? It was 5 minutes coming late 4 minutes ago. He knows it too much. Conductor, don't you ever question how the train runs ever again. The conductor saw Billy said this, no one is required to see Santa. I think he meant was that it's his choice to see Santa. He isn't trying to be mean or being lazy, he's just doing his work. So hero boy and girl comes to Billy, but Billy can't see the picture of Christmas. Hero boy and girl convince Billy to come to Christmas with them, but the coach breaks loose, because hero boy uncouple it. And now the three are now in the train shed. Hero girl follows the tunnel because she hear a sound. They is dangerous, but who cares? They saw the nice and not list and elves saying that a kid had been naughty. This has been bothering me ever since I watch it. Why are they real humans and not motion capture? Such a strange decision, but they ended up finding a present and the present was for Billy. Billy grabs the present because again children are naive people. So they are taking away and the nerd is somehow in the presents. What? How could he survive in this? And after the big star was put back after it has fallen, the elves called them stowaways. How do they are in the presents? Being me, the one and only Fanta man, I mean Santa man. After one of the bell fallen off, hero boy finally now realized he now believes and the bell rings. It caught the attention to Santa and Santa picks hero boy as the first gift of Christmas. Hero boy tells Santa what he wants. He wanted himself because his character arc is completer, and if you already guess it, the theme of this movie is belief. Santa says hero boy has the Christmas spirit lies in your heart. If you don't understand what he means, he's telling that he has good faith upon him and self-belief. If he never had friends he wouldn't able to believe not just in Santa but himself. I adore the Santa. He is exactly how Christmas magic of speeding the speed of sound and the movie perfectly capture him. So one by one the conductor tells what they mean by la for nerd is lean, I mean learn. For Billy it's depend on. It's more about trustworthy. For hero girl lead, and in fact all of them sums up their character arc. But the ticket and bell hero boy has disappeared and lost it. I adore the nerd is shown to be a kind person by the end of the day, and even saying he learned his mistakes and even saying Merry Christmas both to Billy and hero boy. Billy got the first gift of Christmas, showing that everyone deserves their happy ending. Hero boy, thank you. Conductor number, thank you. One thing about trains, it doesn't matter where they're going. What matters is deciding to get on. So when hero boy gets back home, then wakes up but his pocket is ripped again, but received a gift from Santa and says found this on the seat of my sleigh. Better fix that hole in your pocket, Mr. C. But hero boy's parents doesn't hear the bell and end off with the narrator saying on last line, at one time, most of my friends could hear the bell, but as years passed, it felt silent for all of them. Even Sarah found one Christmas that she could no longer hear its sweet sound. Though I've grown old, the bell still rings for me, as it does for all who truly believe. Then the movie ends. Final thoughts. What really sticks for me is the theme of belief. I adore the mysterious aspect of it. So was it really a dream or was it real? It doesn't matter because you can't prove it's real. It's up to you if you believe if it's real or not. The ending is beautiful because it's a thing what real people view. When you grow older, do you still believe in Santa or you just write it off as a joke? The theme seeing is believing is a childlike echo of childlike innocence is of having a care in the world of things like Santa. As I grow older I realized that Zemeckis films now I watch them has a common theme of questioning its humanity. If Steven Spielberg is about the horrors and love of humanity then Robert Zemeckis is about questions of our worldviews that we can full prove that it's real. This is why I think The Polar Express is brilliant and forever a timeless Christmas classic, with the love, care that Robert and Hanks brought to us. You can't say the same with other Dr. Seuss like look what Universal Studios have done. It treated like scrap and treated their kid audience like idiots. But here when you read the book and look at the movie, there has been love in being faithful to the book and I can never appreciate it more. You can't say the same with most other book adaptations movies. I should mention the music believe that perfectly sums up the character arc of Hero Boy being a hopeful and calming music. Conclusion, as you can. I adore this movie and all of those nitpicks I said is still forgivable and just mistakes that people haven't noticed. It's not just a movie, it's an experience. It's flawed, weird, bizarre, thrilling and beautiful. It's not just my favorite Zemeckis movie, even though it's not the best but it's my favorite. It's my favorite Christmas ever. That movie and book was based on Chris Van Allsburg's life experience. It's just bittersweet and The Polar Express is kind of similar to Thomas and Friends because it was based off a book series that was based on Wilbur Tawdry's life experience. To me, basing on your life in a fantasy twist is humanity's greatest love and tells who you are in a depth meaningful way. So that's everything I got to say. On November 10, 2004, Warner Brothers unveiled Robert Zemeckis' The Polar Express in theaters, where it would go on to gross $311 million worldwide and earn 3 Oscar nominations at the 77th Academy Awards. The Hollywood Reporter's original review is below. Unwrapped as the closing night film at the Chicago International Film Festival, The Polar Express was a resounding hit with a middle American family audience and a fitting coming-home celebration for Chicago and Robert Zemeckis, a technical landmark for Zemeckis and hundreds of visual effects specialists at Sony Imageworks. This computer-generated family film has, to boot, 5 Tom Hanks stuffed into its storytelling stocking. The breakthrough presentation should be a runway worldwide success. Based on Chris Van Allsburg's best-selling 29-page novel about a boy's waning faith in Santa Claus and his revitalizing journey to the North Pole, Polar Express is the first computer-generated film based on the performances of humans. But the film is not sheer wizardry, it also has heart. Zemeckis and co-writer William Broyles Jr. have etched an honorable transposition of the popular story of Hero Boy, who is roused one Christmas Eve to board a train that will take him to the North Pole on a journey of self-discovery. While seeing is believing, Hero Boy learns that the things that are most real in the world are those we cannot see. The train contains a diverse mix of traveling kids. Most enchanting are Nana Gay for her voicing of the confident and tender hero girl and Eddie Deezen for know-it-all boy, that thick-headed brain we all remember from our school days. One-man acting band Hanks is wonderfully adroit as both the doubting hero boy as well as a comic hoot as the punctilious train conductor. Hanks also does solid turns as the boy's father, the hobo and Santa. The late Michael Jeter limns 2 quirky characters, Steamer and Smokey, with inspired style, while Charles Fleischer's comic pomposity as the elf general is apt. As befits Zemeckis' personality, there is a need for speed. Polar Express is a runway thrill when the train cascades, roller coaster-like through cavernous peaks and whips the line across icy lakes. There's also rambunctious comedy, a caribou scene that's a real holiday which buttresses the story's sage wisdom. To mount this expedition through mountainous caverns and frozen tundra, Zemeckis captured his actors in 3D, with computers generating a shell performance from which he could select his most advantageous and effective camera position and movement. Mounting a CG film around natural performances invigorates the storytelling with a natural accelerant, connecting Zemeckis' kinetic scopings. Editors Jeremiah O'Driscoll and R. Orlando Duenas unleash a story that soars with breakneck pace but slows in all the tender moments. Visually, This train ride is both majestic and edge of your seat. Directors of photography Don Burgess and Robert Presley's compositions are nourished by shafts of light and shadings, while production designers Rick Carter and Doug Chiang have distilled a timeless Saturday Evening Post look. Most fittingly, author Van Allsburg's drawings are integrated into the look of the movie. Alan Silvestri's lushly sweeping score, whose locomotion often seems churned out by Gene Krupa, is bolstered by his and Glenn Ballard's stirring songs. There's also some perennial standards from Bing Crosby and Frank Sinatra, which make it feel a lot like Christmas. While projected here in 2D, Warner Brothers Pictures will release a 3D IMAX version of Polar Express that should be an eye-popper. A. Dwayne Byard, originally published on October 23, 2004. Cast: Tom Hanks, Daryl Saburo, Nana Gay, Jimmy Bennett, Eddie Deezen and Michael Jeter. Plot: a young boy begins to doubt his belief in the magic of Christmas, until one Christmas Eve, the Polar Express arrives at his door. I have seen this movie far too many times. I work with children at a holiday school as a part-time job, and at the end of the day, we put on a DVD to help them chill out in time for home time. They always pick either a Chicken Little, a Looney Tunes or this. This is a shame, because as far as Christmas movies go, I really don't get along with this one. I appreciate the visuals at the very least. This was a massive jump in animation technology at the time, so as a landmark moment in film, I feel the need to praise Polar Express upon this. It takes the motion capture technology from Lord of the Rings that gave us the terrific Gollum and puts this new craze into a pure animation film. This and a Beowulf were the two films that kicked off this trend. You might recognize the technology from some games this year, Beyond Two Souls being the most common one. So yes, visually this movie is stunning and it is a joy to look out. The film provides us with some beautiful frames and set pieces, really milking this technology and acting as a love letter to how far cinema has come, since the very first animated A Snow White movie by Walt Disney. Sadly, the actual story is so cringeworthy. Kids will love this movie, as it really does take the theme of Christmas and run with it. I have no problem with celebrating Christmas, but this film goes for the moralistic side of things. Therefore, every scene and piece of dialogue seems to be filled with some form of life lesson. We get all of these bratty kids going through some character arcs that I thought we had covered a few decades ago. Everyone is designed by their predominant character flaw, and we have to spend the entire running time of the film watching them get over this. Of course, it gets worse the closer the film gets to its climax, especially with Tom Hanks milking the surrogate god role. I love Tom Hanks as an actor, but this is such a Tom Hanks's amazing role, that it just does not work for me. The whole experience resulted in me cringing at a cheesy script and basic story. But at the end of the day, this film was not made for me, and the kids at work love it to pieces. It summarizes Christmas in broad terms and tries to find a nice moral, even if it does try far too hard. Maybe I should just stop being a Scrooge and applaud this movie for what it does well. It looks great, embraces Christmas and pleases children on Christmas Day. Final verdict: far too cheesy for this reviewer, but I am sure the kids will like it. At the very least, we can admire the fantastic animation for not containing material to warrant a higher rating. Director: Robert Zemeckis. Starring voice of Tom Hanks, Eddie Deezen, Michael Jeter, Peter Scolari, Leslie Zemeckis. Running time: 1 hour, 37 minutes. 4K UHD. Blu-ray release date: November 1, 2022. Amazon.com. When a doting young boy takes an extraordinary train ride to the North Pole, he embarks on a journey of self-discovery that shows him that the wonder of life never fades for those who believe. Combining classic storytelling with cutting-edge filmmaking, the Polar Express debuts a highly advanced version of motion capture technology developed and tailored to meet Zemeckis' uncompromising vision, and is the first feature ever to be shot entirely in this format. From PolarExpressMovie.com, The Polar Express isn't your usual animated film, using motion capture technology like what was used for creating Gollum in the Lord of the Rings films. Director Robert Zemeckis brings to life this children's story on the big screen. The end result is a mixture of failures and triumphs. The animation in Polar Express opts for a more realistic approach to rendering the characters. While in some moments they look more cartoony than in others, the overall feel of the film gives off this creepy, almost ghostly aura. The fact that they're supposed to resemble real people yet have hollow and often empty eyes gives the movie a sort of video game cutscene vibe. The movie works best at a distance, when the camera is pulled back from the action and we see less detail in their faces. At the same time, the action involving the train and the North Pole is breathtaking to say the least. One of the most memorable sequences sees the train sliding across the ice as the camera swoops in from a distance. The train glides in our direction and we're whisked right through the train to its engineer's grip on the brake. The story is a fun fantasy about kids who are starting to question the reality of Santa Claus being given a free ride on a train to the North Pole to see him. While it focuses primarily on the secular side of the holiday, it's a benign and charming little tale. The film, which honestly surprised me to be just rated G, does include a few moments that may be a little too intense for the younger audiences. A hobo on top of the train is rather ominous at times, while Hero Boy's encounter with the puppet is the film's creepiest moment. The movie also chugs along a little too slow in some sequences, dragging down the pacing too much at times. The voice talents in the Polar Express all work nicely, with the exception of, believe it or not, Santa Claus. The film paints him a little too serious and almost a little too godlike, complete with a deep and intimidating voice that is merely a nearly altered version of Tom Hanks' voice. Otherwise, Hanks does a fabulous job as the train's conductor and the boy's father, and even the hobo. Hanks' bosom buddies co-star from his breakout TV role, Peter Scolari, makes a surprise appearance acting out Lonely Boy, a young child who has never had a true family Christmas. It's interesting to note that all of the children were acted out by adults, with motion capture, yet voiced by children. But it does surprise me that Zemeckis and his team didn't aim for more varied voice talents, as the use of Hanks in 4 key roles kind of gives the film a somewhat cheapened feel. That is, couldn't they afford more voice actors? Another strike against the film is the character Know-It-All, a bratty kid with a nasally voice perfect for grating on the nerves of even the most patient. Know-It-All is humorous in his first few moments but downright intrusive when given more screen time towards the end of the film. All faults aside, however, the Polar Express has enough charm to keep its engines running and enough eye candy to keep our attention. It's just, with a little tweaking here and there, a faster pace, and maybe less realistic, and creepy-looking characters, the film could have been a lot stronger. Overall, The Polar Express may be your best bet for a Christmas film this year. This brand of animation looks like it still needs some work, but it looks like the filmmakers may have something significant on their hands if wielded correctly and developed to its full potential. Regardless, round up the family and feel good about taking them on this fantasy-based train ride. John D. Bias, reviewed, December 13, 2004, edited December 2, 2022, 4K UHD review. The Polar Express. It's been 18 years since the film hit theaters, and computer animation has certainly come quite a long way since then, particularly motion capture technology. In all honesty, The Polar Express was never one of my favorite Christmas movies, and trying to revisit it for this review proved to be more painful than I expected it to be. It didn't help that I watched this brilliant pitch meeting video shortly before trying to watch it again, and it highlights everything wrong with this movie. Even in 4K, the movie lacks visually. Its soft look is crisper in UHD, but the animation, mainly for the humans, is just really weak. The humans are just plain awkward in most scenes, and are lacking life. Their animation largely feels unfinished. Director Robert Zemeckis' direction and camera angles are definitely intriguing if there's one thing the movie has going for it. Its creative vantage points within the storytelling. But I think the limits of the technology in 2004 held this movie back from being a lot better. The fact that Tom Hanks performs and voices several of the main characters makes the movie feel a lot smaller. Though, in the end, it's hard to believe this was a big Hollywood feature film. It just feels like a direct-to-video, low-budget project. Finally, that irritating character Know-It-All really damages the film. I have no clue what Zemeckis was thinking. In the end, if you're a fan of the Polar Express, my gripes are worth dismissing. For fans, I'm not sure how much this 4K UHD presentation will bring to the movie. It's probably a little sharper than the Blu-ray, but the animation quality doesn't exactly warrant the 4K treatment. So, in the end, I'm not sure it's worth the upgrade if you have the HD release of the movie already. John D. Bias, reviewed, December 11, 2022, Parental Guide, Content Summary: Sex/nudity, none. Vulgarity/language, none. Alcohol/drugs, none. Blood/gore, none. Violence: the train gets derailed on the ice and loses control, but nothing bad happens. The conductor pulls on the train engineer's beard that makes him yell several times. Disclaimer: all reviews are based solely on the opinions of the reviewer. Most reviews are rated on how the reviewer enjoyed the film overall, not exclusively on content. However, if the content really affects the reviewer's opinion and experience of the film, it will definitely affect the reviewer's overall rating. To find out why we don't typically review R-rated movies, click here. After a promising and distinctive start, a railway adventure to meet Santa runs off the rails. Robert Zemeckis' distinctive-looking animation, digitally derived from live-action footage, gets a re-release in 3D, though it's been shown in the format before. For its 10th anniversary, a small boy, heretically doubting Santa's existence on Christmas Eve, is carried away on a locomotive to the North Pole to meet the great man himself. For half an hour or so, it's great stuff, a mixture of Spielberg, Norman Rockwell and Roald Dahl. Then the schmaltz content gets higher and higher, as if administered through a drip feed, until by the end we are drowning in sucrose. Directed by Robert Zemeckis, produced by Robert Zemeckis, Gary Goetzman, Steve Starkey, William Teller. Written by Robert Zemeckis, William Broyles, Jr. Screenplay, starring Tom Hanks, Daryl Sabero, Nana Gay, Peter Scolari, Chantal Valdiviast. Music by Alan Silvestri. Score, Glenn Ballard. Lyrics, based on The Polar Express by Chris Van Allsburg. Year 2004. The Polar Express, a broken bar. What a divisive film this has been. Look at its ratings on Rotten Tomatoes, and it looks as though it's almost torn down the middle as to how many people actually liked this film. Many marveled at its technical wizardry, while on the other end of the spectrum others were left disturbed by the character models and their dead or doll-like eyes. The film is Robert Zemeckis' return to animation after 1988's Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which itself remains a classic and marvel in its own right, having convincingly placed classic hand-drawn cartoon characters from a broad range of companies into a living, breathing world where toons and humans lived side by side. With the Polar Express, Zemeckis seemingly went backward with this style, using motion capture technology to record live-action performances and integrating them into an animated world. It was a technique Zemeckis would grow to love, apparently, as he would reuse this technique for his next two films, Beowulf and A Christmas Carol, as well as collaborating as executive producer on Monster House. The resulting film is, indeed, a technical marvel, but not necessarily for the human characters or the motion capture technology. At times, the film is almost painterly in quality to it, as if the animators had scanned some beautiful paintings at a high resolution and applied them as textures to some carefully sculpted polygonal models. And, yes, I guess, from a distance, some of the human characters even fleetingly look so human that it nearly had me believing, but a broken bar. Well, am I getting too technical here? Perhaps I am, but there's really not much else to talk about with this film. There's certainly no harm in being a technical marvel, but did they really have to skimp so much on everything else? It's not even that the storyline is bad. The movie itself isn't even bad. It just seems so focused on the technical aspects of everything that Zemeckis and co-writer Broyles were unable to expand the storybook's story beyond the beloved but short children's book. Having not grown up with any memories of this book, which is sad, I'm sure many of you would say, and I do not deny this, I cannot personally account for the film's faithfulness to the content, spirit, or even general looks with the book. All I can say is that, yes, this film does feel like it's padding out what I imagine to be a simple, gentle, and stirring account of childlike faith in the spirit and joyfulness of Christmas with excesses like treacly and or goofy songs, complete with a cameo appearance by, of all people, Aerosmith's Steven Tyler as an elf, a whole lot of 3D action, as it was the first widely released 3D IMAX film to be released simultaneously with its 2D counterpart, so you know where the blame lies for that sort of thinking, as well, and a general overcasting of Hollywood excess. Did you know that Tom Hanks performs an Eddie Murphy level 6 roles here, including the motion captured acting, but not the voice acting, of the film's child-aged main character? It's not that it's jarring. He does a good job of performing as a child and has done so before in the Fantastic Big, and since he is supposed to be narrating as the adult version of the hero boy, it's funny to see how his mannerisms come out in this child. I have to give props to Zemeckis for recognizing the truly amazing potential in this technology, enabling actors to play lifelike characters that they, aside from looks and or age, they were meant to play. Of course, he wasn't the only one, nor the first, as Peter Jackson and his crew did the same a couple of years prior in The Lord of the Rings, where Gollum was similarly realized through Andy Serkis' truly amazing captured performance, and that was in a live-action film, no less. Still, props, all around for having the same visionary ideas around the same time. Bravo! Still doesn't keep the film from feeling like Hollywood excess, and the characters of the Polar Express feel far less lifelike than Gollum. That would have been fine if they hadn't actually, seemingly aimed for realism in this imagined world, but they did, and in their attempt they tripped and fell into the uncanny valley and gave us with some sincerely odd-looking characters that truly illustrate the distinction between awe and ahhh. I am, perhaps, more cynically minded when it comes to these things. Perhaps I'm one of the ones who can't hear the Christmas bells ringing. The film has since gone on to become a Christmas classic. A broken bar somehow. The core story, lifted from the book, is still present, and there are truly moments that stand out emotionally, such as when the hero is struggling to see Santa's big reveal. Big deal. So he looks and sounds like Tom Hanks and the conductor, and the father, and the broken bar, and listen to the sleigh bells. The last few lines are also apparently lifted from the book and gracefully read by Tom Hanks. What I'm saying is that you and your family may enjoy this film more than I did. I merely admired its ambition from afar without any real hope of ever feeling like I could get on the train. Like most other Christmas films, it has, at its core, a good message about the so-called spirit of Christmas. And it even manages to illustrate how gifts can be more than just things if they are given for a reason and with a joyful heart. And, again, much of the film does look truly wonderful. If that is enough for you, then by all means, watch this film and enjoy. I, however, could not get past the technology. The viewer's commentary rating, 2.5 directed by Jeremiah Chechek, produced by John Hughes, Maddie Simmons, written by Job Hughes, starring Chevy Chase, Beverly D'Angelo, Randy Quaid, Juliette Lewis, Johnny Galecki, John Randolph, Diane Ladd, for example, Marshall, Doris Roberts, William Hickey, Mae Questel, Miriam Flynn, Nicholas Guest, Julia Louis-Dreyfus. Music by Angelo Badalamenti. Year 1989. My mom this year decided to put up the Christmas tree in the front of the house, right in the formal living room in front of the window. That might not sound like a big deal, but, really, how many households actually use the formal living room that often? I told my mom this. Families spend most of their time in front of the television. Whether you consider this a tragedy or fact of life, it's true, and I'm used to the tree being right there next to it, for everyone to see. I normally don't like distractions while watching movies, but, during Christmas, I'll make an exception to be able to watch Christmas movies while the tree is nearby. It just feels so broken bar Christmassy. But, I guess, not this year. When I go home for Christmas this year, I'll see the tree in the window as I pull up, but I'll have to go out of my way to see the tree once I get inside. Lazy? Maybe, but it just feels weird. Why did my mom put it there and break our tradition? Her reasoning was that it's nice to have the tree out at the front of the house where everyone can see, where we can pull up to the house and see the tree all lit up. And since it's a fake tree this year, another break with tradition. It is, I guess, less of a safety hazard. In other words, she wanted to try having Christmas the traditional way, meaning the world's typical perception of Christmas tradition and not our own. I don't really know how to feel about this still, but I kind of see her reasoning, I guess. It's unlikely we'll have the house lit up with lights this year due to tight funding and time, and my mom loves decorating for Christmas, so I sympathize with her wanting something visually striking for the world outside to see. I really do. It all just reminds me too much of Clark Griswold. However, as he goes on a futile mission to lighting up his house and put on a spectacle for his family and neighbors in an attempt to recreate the greatest example of Christmas tradition since, as Clark later rather vulgarly puts it, Bing Crosby tape danced with Danny, expletive. It might be the ideal Christmas tradition that everyone else pictures, but, just as it's not normal for us to put our tree where we can't see it regularly, it just wouldn't be the Griswolds without several ridiculous mishaps. As the third film in a comedy series, you might expect Christmas Vacation to see the series wearing out its welcome. Honestly, I'd say that the entire Vacation series nearly came to that point with the rather dull second film, European Vacation. But, as they say, the third time's the charm, and the Griswolds' third outing has, honestly, proven to be my favorite of the bunch, thanks in large part to the very large and very excellent cast. Chevy Chase is in top form, doing both physical comedy and lashing out hysterically with bouts of madness and, like planes, trains and automobiles, hilarious bursts of holiday unfriendly profanity as he tries and fails, over and over again, to recreate the Norman Rockwell-esque family Christmas he remembers from his childhood. Beverly D'Angelo as Ellen is, as all comedy mothers, the voice of reason and as solid as a rock in her support of her inept but well-meaning husband, and D'Angelo is a very good straight man, reacting to the madness around her with subtlety, all while showing signs of cracking herself. I don't know what to say, except it's Christmas and we're all in misery. As for the rest of the family, Juliette Lewis and Johnny Galecki fill in the roles of the perpetually changing Griswold kids this go-around, making up for the boring and even annoying kids in European Vacation, and matching the first Dana Barron and Anthony Michael Hall in the just your typical smart-mouthed kids department. They're different, of course, being far more sarcastic, but they're believable and have good chemistry with everyone else. We also get to meet Clark and Ellen's respective parents, and they're pretty much as you would expect. Ellen's parents, for example Marshall and Doris Roberts, are waspy lushes who never approve of their son-in-law, and Clark's parents, John Randolph and Diane Ladd, are the traditional middle American, reading night before Christmas around the fireplace type parents that Clark aspires to be. And while there are a slew of other supporting characters, including the oft-punished yuppie neighbors who think Christmas is a cliché, Julia Louis-Dreyfus and Nicholas Guest, there are not one but two real scene stealers in this film, Cousin Eddie, Randy Quaid, and Aunt Bethany, Mae Questel, who arrive later in the film but make up for it with several memorable scenes and quotable lines. We've seen Eddie before in a fairly brief appearance in the first film, and he's just as redneck and dim as he's ever been, bringing in his bizarre family for a surprise visit via RV. You surprised, Clark? If I woke up tomorrow with my head sawn to the carpet, I wouldn't be more surprised than I am now, yet he still can't compete with the hilariously senile Aunt Bethany. Oh, Aunt Bethany, you shouldn't have. Oh dear. Did I break wind? Dressed like a plaid flapper girl and married to the crankiest old man next to Scrooge himself, William Hickey, Aunt Bethany is one of the sweetest, most hilarious old ladies put on film. The actual original voice of Betty Boop up until Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Questel makes the most of her limited screen time by providing the film some of its most hilarious moments, even when she's just sitting there knitting, but by far the best is the Christmas Eve dinner where she provides the surprisingly patriotic prayer. Christmas Vacation may not be the most cheerful or family-friendly film, but it's sympathetic towards people like Clark and my mother, who aspire to make this Christmas better than the last for everyone. In the end, the film knows that, despite the squabbles between family members and troubles faced at work, what the traditional Christmas spirit is all about isn't presents, food, or the perfect decorations. Those are all good things, and it's fine to desire them, but what ultimately matters is family, love, peace, and goodwill towards all. A broken bar including snot-dripping dogs. And while it may not be my ideal placement of a Christmas tree, I'm certain that when I pull up to my family's house when I come down for Christmas, I'm going to get the smile on my face when I see the colorful lights in the window and know that Christmas time is finally here. A broken bar. The viewer's commentary rating, 4/5. Directed by Jon Favreau. Produced by John Berg, Todd Komarnicki, Shauna Robertson. Written by David Barenbaum. Starring Will Ferrell, James Caan, Bob Newhart, Zooey Deschanel, Mary Steenburgen, Ed Asner, Daniel A., Amy Sedaris. Music by John Debney. Year, 2003. The 21st century hasn't been kind to the Christmas genre. The signs were there from the very near beginning when in late 2000, which is not the 21st century, Ron Howard delivered his misguided attempt to make a live-action adaptation of Dr. Seuss' How the Grinch Stole Christmas and Brett Ratner's pale imitation of It's a Wonderful Life, the Nicolas Cage starring The Family Man, and on from there we got the endless barrage of cynical actor cash-ins like Christmas with the Cranks, Deck the Halls, Fred Claus, and the terrible sequels to the Santa Claus. Perhaps the worst of these was Surviving Christmas, a miserable, annoying, and rage-inducing film starring Ben Affleck making a nuisance of himself to James Gandolfini. Sure, there were a few good films here and there, but most of the recent Christmas films could be justifiably criticized as being as commercial as the holiday they purport to extol the virtues of. Where are the all-time, gotta-watch each Christmas classics that we got in decades past? Sure, they had their share of proverbial lumps of coal, too, but surely we weren't looking upon them with frozen-eyed nostalgia, right? Are we doomed to never again have a Christmas classic? Well, of course not. Because amid all the naughty films came this wonderful, good little film called Elf, and even though it seemed like it tried to just cash in on the latest craze, Will Ferrell, somehow, the little film shined brightly through the darkness and saved Christmas for all the good little boys and girls. The plot and world of Elf is appropriately whimsical. The North Pole is filled with talking animals and snowmen animated in claymation, for example, and, unlike most Will Ferrell films, it's pretty much 100% totally appropriate for the family to watch together, too. Ferrell plays Buddy, an elf who's not quite so similar to all the other elves around him. When Buddy realizes that he's a terrible toy maker, for example, he's sent to product testing, but he's not very good at this, either. And so Buddy's father, appropriately called Pop Elf, Bob Newhart, reveals to the hilariously enormous Buddy that he was actually an orphan human who had accidentally been brought up to the North Pole in Santa's bag of toys as a baby. His biological father, Walter, James Caan, lives in New York as a children's book publisher, but, to Buddy's horror, Walter is on the naughty list. Like many adopted children, Buddy loves his adopted father, but he wants to meet his real father, who wasn't even aware that he had a grown son in the first place. And so he goes out to meet Walter and, hopefully, help him get off the naughty list by spreading a little Christmas cheer to everyone. I have to say, Elf quickly became one of my all-time favorite Christmas movies right after I saw it. I really like Will Ferrell, even in dull films like Everything Must Go, but for a while there he really seemed to be burning out his whole comedy shtick. Not here. This came before all that, and Ferrell was the perfect choice to play the gleeful, childlike role of Buddy the Elf. The character goes up there with Ron Burgundy and Gene Frankel, the cowbell guy, as one of the defining roles of Ferrell's career. You can't help but smile as he exposes a mall Santa as a fraud. You sit on a throne of lies. You smell like beef and cheese. You don't smell like Santa. Covers everything in syrup and other sugary treats. We elves try to stick to the four main food groups: candy, candy canes, candy corns, and syrup, and explains why he smiles all the time. I just like to smile. Smiling's my favorite. Ferrell captures the childlike spirit of Christmas that every other Christmas film attempts and usually fails to portray, and actually nails both the spirit and the childlike qualities so perfectly that any flaws in the film, and there are some, but not too many, are easily overlooked as you get caught up in his joyfulness. James Caan plays the opposite of sweet-natured as the profit-focused, crabby Walter whose only reasoning for letting Buddy into his life is that it was his only tie to a long-lost love of his. By the end of the film, you get a sense that he's still a work in progress, but the spirit Buddy helped place in his heart has definitely started to settle in, which is a nice change from the usual 180 turn. Zooey Deschanel, looking nearly unrecognizable as a blonde, plays cute but lonely as the department store girl who would fall for Buddy's exuberant personality. One might wonder if he would propose with friendship bracelets or candy jewelry rather than diamond rings. A broken bar, while Mary Steenburgen brings a lot of her own typical sweetness as Walter's incredibly understanding and accepting wife and the mother of Buddy's tag-along half-brother, Michael. The scene where Buddy makes her a breakfast of syrup-smothered spaghetti is hilariously straight-faced. If there really is any flaw, it's the rather by-the-numbers end, where Christmas spirit saves the day. You'd expect it in this kind of film, but somehow it just loses a bit of steam. Maybe it's that the film had so many genuine laughs up till that point that its attempt to switch gears and be so earnest about Christmas cheer that the whole climax felt just a little trite. A broken bar. But that's hardly enough to destroy the film as a 21st century Christmas classic. And while it may not be as technically great as other films in this category, it is, in my opinion, right up there with A Christmas Story and It's a Wonderful Life is necessary viewing this time of year. Don't be a cat and headed nanny muggins. Go out now and watch Elf with your family and friends.